Play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger. My co-host, Bill Robertson, is down in Austin, Texas today on behalf of his day job, so I'm flying solo. But I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Jeff Hintz, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Minnesota section of the PGA and its foundation. And Jeff is here to talk about my favorite sport, golf. Jeff, welcome to Behind the Game.
Well, thanks for having me, Patrick.
Jeff, tell us what the role of the Minnesota PGA is, and specifically what you do as the executive director to advance its mission.
Yeah, so the PGA of America has 41 sections across the country, and the Minnesota section of the PGA of America is one of those 41. And our geographic territory is Minnesota, North Dakota, most of South Dakota, and a little bit into Wisconsin. So we have about 600 members and assistants or associates, as we call them. And what we do really is just to serve our members and grow the game. That's and a very small essence of what we do is provide programming for them, whether it's growth of the game programming that they can implement at their facilities, or youth development programs, or education so they can continue to enhance their skill set to really grow the game. That's why we exist.
As we tape this, we've just hosted here in Minnesota the KPMG Women's PGA Championship.
Sure.
We're on the eve of the new 3M Open. Mm-hmm. What makes Minnesota such a great place for golf tournaments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say, I think the initial response that you'll get from a lot of entities that come in town and run an event, whether it's a big sporting event like the Final Four, the Super Bowl, or a golf event, they'll say, well, it's the corporate environment here is really strong, and it needs to be mentioned, because without the corporate support that these big events have had over the years, they probably wouldn't come back, these other organizations, to host events. So that's really critical. Volunteerism is another one that you probably get immediately, but I guess I think about a different angle in that it's the community here in Minnesota and the culture on being an outdoors type of culture. I'm not from the area. I'm born in Iowa and raised in Indiana, and we still are finding bike paths and new ways to go outdoors and recreate here in Minnesota after being here for 4.5 years. So with the outdoors mentality here, golf. And what I've learned over the course of the years in the last 15 to 20 years is when we take an event, when I say when the PGA of America has taken an event to a community that may have a short golf season like we do here, you may get like 5 good months. The supply and demand and just the desire for people to really engage with a game of golf is in a very short window. And so that's why I think the events really excel here from a golf standpoint. People love golf here, and they have a short window to get it in. And then when the game's best come in, let's go out and support it. Let's go see it.
Yeah, it's really remarkable in a state with such a short golf season that we embrace the game as strongly as we do. In fact, I think Minnesota is in the top 2 or 3 per capita in the country in terms of number of golf courses and number of golfers.
It is, and Michigan, I think, is in that top 2 or 3. So think about Michigan and Minnesota. They're north.
Yeah.
So, we see when you have options, you go down to Florida, you go to Texas, or you go to California, and you can play golf pretty much year-round in most of those locations. Golf may be diluted a little bit, so you've got kind of this powerful 5 months to go out and get your golf in. So that's what makes it special here in Minnesota.
Now, Minnesotans have typically turned out in big numbers for the tournaments here.
Sure.
The KPMG Women's PGA Championship maybe didn't meet expectations in terms of attendance. Any thoughts about why that may be?
It's an interesting one. I think I read that too, and I was there Monday through Sunday. I think one thing that's really difficult to do is to compare what we saw last week at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship and compare it and sit it next to, say, the Ryder Cup in 2016, or compare it to a PGA Championship in 09, or a PGA Championship in 02, or the 91 US Open. It's a different event. And you think about the markets that the KPMG Women's PGA Championship has been to since the collaborative effort was formed between the LPGA Tour, the PGA of America, and KPMG. They've been in New York metropolitan market at Westchester. They were in Seattle. They were in Chicago the last 2 years, and now here. Then they're going to go to Philly. And there's a few others, maybe in New York sprinkled in there. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of momentum being built up around this event. And what I'm told when I asked some of the folks that were in that for the week, just asked, hey, how are tickets this week? They broke all the records from all those markets. And so while it may not be a great comparison from events that have been hosted here in Minnesota, I can tell you that PGA is really happy with the performance and the collaborative effort between the community, and you just can't put it on the same level. Now, I think about tennis, and think about the U.S. Open in tennis, and the women's game in tennis, and how that really has exploded in the last 20 years. And I think you could make the argument that women's tennis might be more popular than men's tennis, with more recognizable players. You talk about a gender gap in pay. You go to the U.S. Open tennis, it's the same purse for the men's game and the women's game. And so golf's got a ways to go, and I think that's the collaborative effort between KPMG and the LPGA Tour and the PGA of America. There's a lot of muscle behind it, and that event, I was there all week, it's a great event. The players can play. It's a great experience for fans. They're engaging. So I think they have a wonderful product. They've got a great broadcast partner in NBC, too, to tell the story. So I think the future's bright for the event.
Do you think the women's tour would benefit from having a female version, if you will, of Tiger Woods, somebody who has really captured the imagination of the sporting public?
Well, absolutely. I think anytime you can mention the name Tiger Woods and say, could we have an equivalent, I think any sport would take it. There are some bright superstars, some young superstars. There's a young gal by the name of Maria Fassi. She's from Mexico. And to watch her hit a golf ball is pretty magical. And I made sure I took some time out to watch her hit a golf ball because it's a humbling thing to watch. She's a lot of power, and she's got kind of the whole aura, and she's got the ingredients to be wildly popular. And the women's tour has had some big name players like Annika Sorenstam and Lydia Ko there for a few years. She was pretty much an unstoppable force. Lorena Ochoa, another Mexican player, she was fantastic too. So I think the future's bright for women's golf. I really do.
Now, Minnesotans are accustomed to the big tournaments.
Yeah.
We've hosted a U.S. Open. We've hosted PGA Championships. Obviously, we had the Ryder Cup in 2016. We're about to play the inaugural 3M Open.
Yeah.
So we have an annual tour stop now on the PGA Tour. How do you think that will do in the long term?
Personally, I feel like it's going to be wildly successful. I think the thing that it does not have going up against it that's lurking in the future right now, in the immediate future, is a major championship on the men's side. There's no U.S. Open lurking. There's no PGA Championship lurking. The only thing you can say is off in a distance is the Ryder Cup in 2028 at Hazeltine. And so you've got this long runway of years to really build an exquisite event that the players want to come to, that want to bring their families for the summer and celebrate, and really for the spectators and the corporate support to turn it into kind of a big party. I mean, you think about sports now, that's what it's all about, is not just that core sport, it's the entertainment value that you can offer to spectators at any sport that you go to, any game. And golf has figured that out. And so I think Hollis and the crew, that's operating that event, they'll do a great job this year in the first year, and it just will continue to build and be a fantastic event. Hopefully more and more players make the decision to come here and really kind of show off their game to Minnesota, because it's a great golf community that would really enjoy seeing them here.
Now, you started your career
Yeah.
as an intern with the senior event under Hollis Gabner.
Sure,
right?
I did, yes.
Way back in 1999. But you very quickly elevated through the ranks of golf management. And at just 36 years old, you were appointed as the director of the Ryder Cup, arguably the biggest event in golf. It happens once every 2 years, and I mean, the world stops to watch the Ryder Cup.
Sure.
That was a pretty heady accomplishment.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate because timing worked out in my favor, and there are many examples of timing didn't work out in my favor over the course of my career when I was on that side of it. And I got lucky, from a timing standpoint, but I was hyper-focused on, I wanted to be a director of an event, a golf event, by the time I was 30. And I turned 31 and I hadn't, and I don't feel like I failed, but I didn't hit that check mark for me. And so not long after that, I went to the Senior PGA Championship in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and was the tournament director for that in 2012 and then 14. And then I got a call in 2014. Somebody decided to leave the PGA of America that was slated to come here, and I was the first one that my boss called and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you at Hazeltine to run the Ryder Cup," and I don't know how you say no to that. So it was a fun experience, and super thankful for the opportunity to do it. Surrounded by really great people and volunteers, and we go back to that corporate support. And I love to tell you it was a super easy job. It wasn't. It was full of stress, and there was a lot going on. But it made it much easier because the community really supported it.
So you take on a task like that, were you intimidated? Was it, you said, man, this is the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, I think throughout my career I've always felt like if you don't feel that little voice in your head that says you can't do this, maybe a little bit of self-doubt, then is it a challenge? And so for me, there were times when I said, oh boy, this is the biggest of the big. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than the Ryder Cup. What am I doing here? Why me? But again, I think, if you can really push yourself to do things out of your comfort zone, then magical things can happen, and that's kind of what I did. So, and it wasn't all about me. I mean, that event was, I had a great on-site championship staff, and we all had functions, and it ran like a really well-oiled machine. We had very good people.
Well, you did such a great job with the tournament that the Star Tribune named you as the Sports Person of the Year in the market in 2016. What did that honor mean for you?
Well, I was shocked. I got a note from Jim Suhan that basically put it in an email and said, hey, just FYI, you're going to be named this. And I had to read it a few times. I couldn't believe it. But it offered me a chance to kind of reflect again on what we just talked about. On that award is super meaningful to me, but it's I feel like I just was the lucky one that they chose. No matter who it was going to be at the helm for the Ryder Cup was probably going to get it, because we had all the right people on the team. I had people that really supported me in the event, and Hazeltine and their leadership there, and the staff at Hazeltine. And I mentioned our staff, the PGA staff. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands. We had 4,200 volunteers, thousands of people that had a hand in that event. I was the lucky one. So.
The Ryder Cup is unlike any other tournament in golf. It's team competition. Yeah. There's singing, there's chanting, there's heckling. Right. There must be some great backstories, some really interesting experiences that you had when that tournament was going on.
Ryder Cup. Yeah, I would say, actually I was just talking to somebody last week that one of my regrets with the Ryder Cup was that I didn't reflect each evening during the lead up to the Ryder Cup to either write it down or just take a voice note or of what happened that day, because we're reminiscing last week with a few folks that were on the staff, and there's another story that I almost forgot about, and it resurfaced. So if I had to do it all over again, I would write it down. But yeah, there are some really good kind of juicy nuggets on the inside scoop that you'd never know. Let's see. Many people probably don't know that there was a stats team that was employed by the PGA of America to give Davis Love, our captain, and the vice captains more layers of data so they can make decisions on who to pair with who, on what their strengths were going into the Ryder Cup that year, if they're really good from outside of 10 feet on putting, which would give Davis ammunition on who would tee off an alternate shot. So the level of information just from the data scientist that was coming in, on his picks, even who he wanted to pick for his captain's pick, was amazing. I mean, I guess that would be information.
So analytics has clearly creeped into golf as well.
Absolutely, it sure did. And then I think one of the stories that really sticks with me is Davis Love came in about a year to go, and we had a dinner with he and his wife Robin, and he got emotional. He lost the Ryder Cup. He didn't lose it. The team lost in 2012. He was the captain at Medina in Chicago, and it was an epic comeback for the Europeans that year. And Davis really shouldered the blame, and it came out at dinner that night, a year before the Ryder Cup. And he was so happy to be back in a position to try to get a victory that he broke down. He was very emotional at dinner. And that's when it really became kind of real for me, that, wow, this is a big deal for not just Davis Love, but for the players. And at the end of the day, it's an exhibition. They're not playing for money. Like you said, this is a team sport in golf. And that's what makes it so compelling, because it's so different from the week to week to week, 50 weeks out of the year or 48 weeks out of the year that you see on TV. For 1 week every 2 years, you get this unbelievable team competition in golf where they're not playing for a purse, they're playing for each other in their country, or in the case of Europe, their continent. So.
Well, it's my favorite event in sports.
Yeah.
It was a treat to be at Medina. Unfortunately, I saw USA collapse on the final day.
Yeah, I was there too.
But I was also at Hazeltine and had an
good.
opportunity to see the team win and bring the cup home.
Sure.
Just a couple of days before the start of the Ryder Cup, maybe golf's greatest ambassador, not maybe, the greatest golf ambassador of all time, Arnold Palmer, passed away. That must have presented some challenges for you as you were getting ready to start the tournament.
It did, yeah, and we were given a heads up by the Palmer camp that he was not well in the months leading into it. Of course, it's on the back of your mind, but you don't fully prepare for it until it really happens, because that's kind of a different situation. If we have weather, we're fully prepared for it, but you're talking about the death of one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and how do you really prepare for that in advance of it happening? So when that happened, I can remember it vividly. On Sunday night, we had a chairperson appreciation reception, which is basically we have all the leadership from Hazeltine that are on committees, and we thank them, and it's a nice reception. Well, about halfway through it, people are looking at their phones, which is not uncommon in normal life, but for that event to be looking at your phone and showing it to your friends, and then jaws dropping, and then we heard right away, he passed away. So there was an announcement made, and it was, just the feeling in the room just, it went from the celebratory, hey, we're going to be on the big stage, we're going to put on this great show, to we just lost one of the game's greats. And so just, the room just emptied with emotion. So that night was a late night. We went to the media center and started brainstorming on, okay, how do we want to honor his legacy at the Ryder Cup, do it in a tasteful manner that gets the right amount of attention, and gives people an opportunity to really just kind of reminisce and think about the king. And so we stayed probably till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and we talked about all different ideas. Let's get the rainbow umbrellas and have everybody in the first tee put up the umbrella on Friday on the first tee. And what we netted out at was, let's get all the Arnie's Army pins that we could find on the face of the earth, all the umbrella pins that we could find. Let's put a memory wall up at the main entrance and have people sign it with messages. But probably the most impactful one was, we got a Ryder Cup bag from Arnold Palmer from one of his Ryder Cups that he played in, and put it on the first tee on Friday morning. And every player walked by that bag. And that was a really neat moment. And the Golf Channel produced a wonderful video, a tribute video for Mr. Palmer, that was shown on the Jumbotron there at the first tee and on the Golf Channel. And You know, it was a great way to really celebrate his life. The family was super cooperative, and at the memorial service, they delayed until after the Ryder Cup, so all the players and the captains could attend that in Pennsylvania. So
Yeah, he was a great man.
Yeah.
I had a chance to meet him on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
If there was one criticism of the 2016 Ryder Cup, it was of fan behavior. There was a lot of heckling done by American fans towards European players. Do you think that criticism was warranted? And how do you try to manage a situation like that? Or can you even?
Yeah, I've got
manage it?
an interesting story about that one too. So I would say I'm biased in this, but like any other sport, you're going to have, say we have close to 60,000 people in one spot. There's going to be a bad seat or two. It's just going to happen. And that's a microcosm of society. Not everybody's going to play by the rules, if you will. And so I think what's unfortunate is you had a couple individuals that were out of line, that then there's a bad rap placed on the community here. And what was neat to see is how it was pretty much self-enforced, with the exception of a few individuals. Somebody got out of hand, people spoke up. And I think for 99.99, and you can add a bunch of nines after that, percent of the people that were there, they were classy golf fans. It's just one or two people that you know, unfortunately that's just kind of the way that it works from a media standpoint. And so what do you do to combat that? I can remember sitting in the media center on Sunday morning after all this went down on Saturday with one individual who was ejected from the property. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to address it? Let's do messaging on the video boards, and let's make sure that, you know, we identify anybody that is out of line and get them off the property. But I remember one of the things that we did at the Ryder Cup, which is new, is we had music on the first tee, which was kind of neat. You know, golf maybe needs to lighten up a little bit sometimes, and so to have music at a professional sporting event is pretty normal. To have music at a golf event, not normal. But I can remember sitting in the media center on Sunday morning, figuring out what the plan was, how we're going to communicate, and all I heard in a distance was "Jump Around" playing very loudly on the first tee speakers. And I wanted to be there and not talking about, you know, unruly fans, so one or two individuals. So, you know, I went to Paris in 2018 for the Ryder Cup, and you know, I was at Medina in 2012, and I mean, you could say it for, I was at Valhalla in 2008. You could say it for any event. There's always going to be a few individuals, and there were in Paris, but I don't know that we heard about those individuals. So
Sure.
it just happens.
In 2028, Hazeltine will be the first American venue to host the Ryder Cup twice.
Yeah.
What is it about Hazeltine that makes it such a great championship golf course?
If I had to tell you one word, big.
It is big.
It's big.
And tough.
Yeah, and there are so many courses that would love to host an event like the Ryder Cup or a PGA Championship or a US Open for that matter, that have just essentially what's happened is they're landlocked. They've got homes or they're in a neighborhood and there's not enough room to build the infrastructure. So Hazeltine was really smart after the 1991 US Open. They acquired the land adjacent to the property, which is all that farmland, and we were able to build and build and build, have all of our back-of-house needs. We had on-site parking, and so that's one reason why it's a great venue to have the Ryder Cup. The other reason is it's a great stage for golf. It's a long golf course. You can make it as hard as you like from a challenging standpoint. It can be really, really difficult and really long. It was a great stage in great theater for the game of golf in 2016 with some great golf being played. You think about, I think it was Phil and Sergio, and just the duel they had during the Ryder Cup in the singles match. So it can present some really great golf too. So of course you want that to happen, right? All over TV. So
I want to make sure that we touch on your foundation,
Sure.
the Reach Foundation, which is part of this section. What are some of the key initiatives of the Reach Foundation?
Yeah, so Reach, so it's PGA Reach Minnesota. It's introducing the game to individuals that may not take up golf until either later in life or may never do it, with programs in cooperation with Augusta National and the USGA on a program called Drive, Chip, and Putt, which is a lot like the NFL had a punt, pass, and kick. So golf now has a DCP that the winners advance into local qualifying, to regional qualifying, and then the national finals are at Augusta National the day before the Masters week. So that's a neat event that we work on and we execute at the section level. We have Junior League Golf. Junior League Golf is like any other community Little League sport or soccer. So it's essentially a team competition. That team competition that we just talked about with the Ryder Cup, we've basically had that similar setup with a Junior League Golf. So you can play home and away matches against other clubs in your area. So that's a huge growth initiative. We also have an extensive tournament series. We've got 2,000 kids that compete in tournaments at all different levels. We run 200 events over the course of the summer, which is a lot of events all over the state in our section. Golf in schools is another youth initiative that we're doing. We think, the sooner we can get a club in a child's hand, the sooner that they'll fall in love with the sport. And if we can do like other sports have done in the school environment, we think that's a great thing for golf going forward. So that's a little bit what we do on the youth space. The military, what we do on that front is just so special. I was at Lost Spur this last week, and there's been a long-standing program there with our veterans, our nation's heroes, our true heroes. Not somebody that can hit a golf ball 330 yards. It's somebody that went to war for our country or served our country that are being rehabilitated through the game of golf. And it's such a neat program, and it's been happening for 10 years out at Lost Spur. So it's actually using PGA professionals with a therapeutic modality to rehab our nation's heroes. That's what PGA Hope is, helping our patriots everywhere. That's what that stands for. So we do that on the military front. On the inclusion side, golf in schools, again, trying to get into places that where we can really kind of expand the net for the game of golf to grow in the future is really what we focus on a foundation standpoint. So it's a great way for our professionals and our organization to really give back to the community.
I've been involved with Tee It Up for the Troops for many years. Same thing. Yeah. Golf can really have a great impact with veterans.
Right.
We've just got about a minute left. Much has been written about the future of golf. The millennials aren't playing it. It takes too long, it's too expensive, and it's hard. Okay. What do you think? Where do you think golf is going? Does it have a future?
Golf's not going away. It's going to be around, and it's cyclical. So I think we're in this great time period of time being the primary resource. For a long time it was probably money, but right now it's time. And so golf is cracking the code on trying to grow the game with the family, because I think that's the key for the future is you get mom and you get dad to play, or better yet, you get the kids to play first, then the parents are going to follow. And I think we're going to see some great things for the game of golf in the future. It really is bright, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity. You're right, it can be difficult. It can be expensive if you want to play expensive golf courses. But I can tell you that the way that we're set up with our PGA professionals, they're the men and women that make golf easier, which makes it more fun.
Fantastic. Jeff, thanks for being on Behind the Game. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great chatting with you today.
Thanks
and thanks for watching Behind the Game. We'll see you next month.